What's going on, guys? So today we will be doing a coilover setup on a 2012 Ford Fiesta. So this is not an ST, this is a regular Ford Fiesta. However, the suspension system is relatively the same. I don't really think there's any difference. So although when you're searching you may not find anything that says specifically for a non-ST Fiesta, it seems like they are the same parts, maybe with some minor differences, none that I could actually find. So I'm going to take you through how we're going to be doing this. So we have a front coilover, and in the rear, we're not going to a true coilover setup. It will still be a strut with an independent spring. So I have a Bilstein set of coilovers. These ones allow for about a 2-inch drop or a 1.6-inch drop, front and rear. And I'll put you guys through the instructions of how we're going to go through and do that today. Alright guys, so starting off on the rear, it's a real simple thing. So to get the strut out, our shock absorber, first thing first is you have this rear strut bolt here. This is a 16 millimeter, and don't bother touching the front side. You really just have to go from the back. The back is the only part that comes out. This nut right here is fixed to the assembly. And then if you look up, you have 2 bolts at the top of the strut. And I believe those were 13 millimeters. So you just use those 2, and then once you do that, you can pull it right out. There's no need to go into the interior of the car. It's completely free. And from there on, you're going to be able to remove the spring. So right now, this shock absorber is in the way of the spring. And once you pull that out, you can push down on the drum brake or on the assembly down here, and then you'll be able to yank out the spring. This is preferably done with 2 people and makes it a lot easier. So once you're down here at the back, on the bottom of the strut, quick correction, this is actually a 15 millimeter bolt. If you live in like a snow belt area, a lot of rust, you might want to use a breaker bar to get this off because it can be pretty tough. And then after that, you pull it straight out and you can make your way up to the top with the 13 millimeters. Also, if you know you're going to be doing this job in advance, like every couple of days or every other day, come spray like some lubricant, WD-40 or something on all these bolts to get them like nice and loose before you start the project, because they can be a real hassle. Alright, so after the strut assembly is out, you can see it's gone. One more correction, these were actually 10 millimeters at the top, but the new top hats I got for the strut assembly, because the Bilstein ones don't come with top hats for some reason, use 13 millimeters. So like I said, 13 millimeters will be replacing it, but it was a 10 millimeter to get it out. Now we have to get the spring out. So a lot of times you'll see people kind of just like stand on the drum, and that'll pull down on here enough for someone to pull the spring out. You can do that, and that's still kind of required. But you can also use a spring compressor on both sides of the spring. So use 2 of them, 1 on each side. Clamp the spring together. That'll make it a little bit easier, and then get someone to push down on here, and you can pull out the spring. Okay, so now you can see the whole rear suspension is out essentially. So when you're doing the Bilstein setup in particular, depending on which one you get, it might have all this stuff already preset for you. For the Bilstein one, you have to reuse your top hat, that shock bump absorber, this sleeve. You have to take it off your old strut and then put it onto the new one. I went ahead and got a new top hat for this one just because, I don't know, just got a new top hat instead of trying to use the old one in case anything went wrong. And then you have, this is your height adjuster for the system in the rear. And then you obviously have your new spring. So out of the things that you take out of the back here, that little seating, like housing at the bottom, that seats, that needs to go back in. But the top part, which is this right here, that doesn't need to go back in. That will be completely replaced by this part. So now seat your spring with the words facing upwards. So you can see it says Bilstein on there with a date. You have to want the words facing upwards, and then also you'll be placing this on top. So this fits with the blue facing down, and then you have this black rubber gasket that goes on top, and that will, just 1 second, that will seat, my bad, that will seat on this bump right here. So the silver part with the black rubber gasket goes in there, and they hold into place together like that, and then the bottom of the spring goes into the other seating at the bottom down there. Okay, so like I said before, you're probably gonna need some help because you need someone to push down on this in order to get things in place properly, just like you need someone to push down on it to get the old spring out. Spring compressors also help, although when you're on the muffler side, it's hard to get one on either end in order to compress it properly and able to pull it out. But either way, once you get that done, you can adjust your height. You can see that we have it as max low for the rear, Like I said before, this Bilstein kit only drops about 1.6 inches, like 2 inches. So not a significant amount, not like it's gonna be dragging on the floor or anything, so it can go max flow. And then after that, you can get your strut assembly ready to go in. If you already set it up before, like I said, with the bump stop and the sleeve and the new top hat, then you can slide it up to the top and put it in the bottom here, and then you're all done in the rear. Okay, so moving on to the front, you're gonna have 3 nuts at the top of the strut tower here. These are incredibly difficult to get out. This is the passenger side of the vehicle. This one's slightly easier. I recommend that you not disconnect, but remove the bolt that holds the AC line fixed in place. It's a 10mm bolt, and once you do that, you get a little bit more access to the front 2 bolts at the top, or nuts at the top. And then there's one tucked away in the back there. That one's really hard to get to. Really, there's no trick to it from what I found. It just takes patience and effort. And then moving on to the driver's side, you'll notice we have this brake fluid reservoir right in front of it. So let me put the light down. Oops. There we go. So this brake fluid reservoir, also this is very difficult to get out. So you have one easy to access 10mm here, and then you have a tough access 10mm in the rear. Again, just patience and effort to get this out. But once you do, you can pull it out the way and kind of rest it here. It'll pop back and forth, but you can just rest it out of the way. And then you'll need more patience and effort to get rid of these 3 bolts. Again, one tucked all the way in the back, making it very difficult to access. But I suggest you use a ratcheting wrench and a long normal wrench. Or if you have a long ratcheting wrench, and then you're in the best position. I do not. I have a short stubby ratcheting one and a long regular wrench. So you'll need a combination of those if you want to get this job done. Okay, so in the front, you're going to be using 15mm here on this end of the bolt, and it's an 18mm on the other end. So you need 2 different sockets. Really, you need a wrench in a socket to hold one steady. Initially, you can break it loose on either side, but then you'll need the other one to stop the nut from spinning. But before you do that, if you're like me, well, you're gonna need to do this regardless, but you have to take off the sway bar end link. So the top, here's the sway bar end link. I'm gonna be replacing those. It uses a 14mm on the outside, and then you also need an Allen key, and I believe it's a 3/16 Allen key to put in the middle of the sway bar end link. So initially you can break it free with the 14, but then after that it'll start spinning. So you'll need a 14mm wrench and that 3/16 Allen key to stop it from spinning, and then you can break that loose and you can get it free, pop it out of place. And then other than that, it's just these 2 15 and 18, one on top, one at the bottom. Anything that's connected, so the brake lines here and the ABS lines over here, and then like I showed you before, the 3 nuts on the top hat, and then this will come free fairly easily. Okay, so now everything's out, you can get to moving on your new assembly. So you obviously have to take out the other end of the sway bar end link if you're replacing it. If you're not replacing it, you can leave it in place, because it is kind of harder to take out the one that's facing in the opposite direction. If you are removing it and replacing it, I believe you should take it out first before trying to pull the strut out. It kind of like forces the strut up in a weird direction, And just in general, be careful when playing on the strut because it kind of like springs off in a direction to the left, so you can hurt your hand doing that. Other than that, you can get your new strut assembly and just slide it into place. Before that though, put in your new end link if you're replacing it, just put the bottom half in, and then when you get the new strut assembly in, the top half can connect to that. Okay, so after you have your new strut assembly, you'll just fish it up into the top. You should get somebody else to help you. If not, you can just kind of reach up with your hand and put two of the top hat nuts on to hold the strut in place. And once you have it in place, and then you can fiddle down here and get everything lined up. So like I said before, it's just the 2 bolts that attach to the knuckle right here. You'll have the brake line bolt, which you took out from the old one, that can go back in if it's up there. And then on the Bilstein one in particular, it doesn't have a place for the ABS lines, but it has like these little like zip type straps that you're supposed to use to hold it in place. And then you can put your sway bar end link into the top there, and you're all set. You'll just torque everything down, and that's the completion of this kit. Alright, so there were the last steps. After you see the new coilover in here, the end link, you make sure you torque all your bolts down. These were 85 pound-feet. You have your ABS lines, your brake lines, put everything back in order. Then you can slap your wheel back on, torque those down. Make sure if there's anything in the engine bay you move, like I didn't disconnect, but I moved the AC line out of the way with the 10mm here. Make sure to put that back. For this side, make sure to put your brake reservoir back. I know it's a pain, but you know, it was there, so put it back. And then you can just close the hood, lower the car down. If you did coilovers, it'll take a little while to settle. If you did stock suspension, again, it will still take a little while to settle, but for the most part, it'll be good. You might hear a few creaks and stuff initially when you put the car down. But other than that, everything's set. And if you like this video, you found it helpful, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll get you guys in the next video.